everyone, and welcome to another Inside Gaming preview. We spelled that right. I'm Alana, and I've got Kaden on the phone helping me out today to talk all about Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah, in case you missed it, there is a brand new Baldur's Gate on the way.
How excited were you about this announcement, Kaden?
I'm pretty excited. It's been a hot minute since we've got a Baldur's Gate game, and D&D games in general have been historically really good, and we've gotten to this point where they're even better now, so I really want this game.
Yeah, I think it was 2013 with Baldur's Gate 2, I think?
That sounds about right.
Yeah, still a while ago, but yeah, so from Wizards of the Coast, and this time Larian Studios, the third game in the popular party-based RPG series based on Dungeons & Dragons is actively being worked on pretty much right this second. It's in early enough stages that we don't have a release date, and I didn't get to actually play the game, but I did get to see several hours of gameplay with a detailed developer commentary at an event last week.
Either way, we're going to approach this preview as though you don't necessarily have a huge amount of familiarity with Baldur's Gate or with Larian Studios, just in case. But if you do, and you are fans of both, we think you'll follow just fine.
Yeah, it's not like this is gonna be like dumbed down and over-explain everything. You'll be okay. So, with that out of the way, wow, is this game pretty. Even the character creator is immensely detailed and good looking. You can base your character on Larian's existing origin story prototype if you want to, where a character is established and written with a particular plot for that character in line, or you can just not. You can choose your race, class, appearance, skills, I mean, pretty much everything.
Okay, that's great, but how extensive is it actually?
Oh boy, it's incredibly customizable. Like, so customizable that I didn't quite get to see how legit it was because the guy who was running through it moved a little too quickly and I'm sitting there furiously taking notes and then it's done. He did pick a vampire type subclass though, which was one of the origin story characters, meaning they basically have a unique personal plot tied into the campaign. It did look a lot like the Divinity Original Sin 2 character creator, but I'm glad to see more of the origin story characters regardless. They're very cool.
That is not a bad thing to be compared to, but
Yeah.
Did you see how any of that influenced the actual gameplay?
Yeah, a ton. So we specifically played with a vampire spawn build, which had a huge influence on the gameplay. It was an evil character, even the alignments are very D&D. They wanted to be a vampire, but they technically weren't yet. Like, in theory, they have a vampire master of some kind. Still, it meant that even in a huge choice-based RPG, our protagonist, who was also a rogue class, didn't like sunlight, couldn't walk over water, and had to be invited to enter places just like most vampires do.
Oh, that's so cheeky. So, if your choice of character is actually, benefited or disadvantaged by the game world, what's that like?
Well, to start with, okay, just to bring it back, we started with this goddamn stunning cutscene that I especially can't shy away from mentioning because Larian's previous games haven't actually had cinematics like this. It was breathtaking. But then when you're actually playing the game, it looks somewhere between like King's Landing from Game of Thrones and everywhere else in Game of Thrones. What I mean to say is that Baldur's Gate is and always has been very high fantasy. It's beautiful, detailed, and swaps between a third person and isometric camera, and hey, there are dragons. But there are also like sci-fi elements, kind of.
Wait, like what? Sci-fi?
Yeah. Yes. It works though. So a very significant part of this game is the presence of these tadpoles that have like very creepily, disgustingly injected themselves into the eyes of our main character and some other party members as well via some kind of like spooky ship. It looks like Thanos' ship, kind of. It's just this weird thing that you see floating above the city. I'm trying not to give away too much, but basically these bugs have infected our main character and they grant unique abilities as well as the imminent threat of death if we don't try to remove them within like a week or so. So that is the immediate drive of the plot. Get rid of the parasite that's, in this case, letting you walk in the sunlight when you otherwise wouldn't be able to, and granting you telepathy, but also promising your imminent demise.
Okay, so how does this weird tadpole thing play into dialogue? Tadpole, this is so creepy. It's
very, very
unnerving.
gross.
So that's always been a big thing with previous Larian games, so how does this really actually play into the dialogue?
Yeah, I mean, the dialogue options are a massive part of this game, like the bread and butter, really. Dialogue with potential party members, dialogue with enemies, and all the choices you have based on your stats or even your class or alignment. So if you want to lie to someone, an actual d20 die will roll on screen, adding this kind of insane tension and telling you your result in real time. Like being in that room and watching one person play and having everyone else as spectators, while there's a dice roll, you could hear a pin drop in that room, and then everyone would like genuinely laugh or cheer or sigh at the reaction of just watching someone else play. Very, very exciting. But maybe you need a 10 to lie successfully, it'll tell you need a 10 on screen, and then you only roll a 6. That kind of thing is so exhilarating to watch, and I can't wait to actually try it for myself.
That gets me super excited. I love that stuff. Did you have any like dialogue options that are based on the character specifically being like a wannabe vampire?
Yes, and it was also super cool. You could stare at someone like we wanted to eat them because physical behavior sits in the dialogue tree too, which I love. You don't necessarily say something, you can choose what you're doing or even what you're thinking sometimes. We could literally tell them we wanted to eat them. You could lie, you can be charismatic, you can manipulate, you can make comments about hating the sun. Seriously, I'm so impressed by the choices in this game, and I can't wait for people to see it. It's pretty literal too. The actual facial animations are very detailed, and every character we spoke to seemed to be physically moving in very diverse ways in a way that I feel like I've not seen before. Every single character, which, you know, they have things that look like Satan, and they have dwarves, and they have orcs. Every single character seemed to be animated independently, which I imagine is impossible, but it looked very good.
Okay, so world is detailed, check. Characters detailed, check.
Correct.
Dialogue detailed, check. How about the actual gameplay? You know, the thing that we're gonna be doing for, you know, the entire playthrough.
Would you believe me if I said it's detailed? Yeah. You can move random crates in the world to create stairs. I know that doesn't sound like a huge thing, but it does mean that you can kind of approach environments completely differently to previous games in Baldur's Gate and also previous games in the Divinity series. So they basically help you with how much more vertical the environments are this time around. You can use an action to jump a long distance, with certain characters being able to leap higher than others, but maybe if you jump incorrectly, you'll like break a leg or something. You can set up camp that acts like a home base for all your companions and build relationships there. You can sneak and hide in shadows or darkness, which you can create yourself. You can throw your damn boots at people if you want to.
Hell yeah! So I can throw my boots at people. Does that equate into combat? So what's combat actually like?
Just so many choices, Caden. So many. It's sort of slow, but extremely tactical and methodical, with one of the harder fights we saw taking a full 20 minutes just for one room. That was just one room with about 6 enemies. They were just goddamn tough, and we had to get creative to beat them, like dropping oil intentionally, moving some party members back away from it, coaxing the enemies forward a little bit, and then having another party member who was away from this mess of oil break a fire pit that was suspended that drops, and then engulfs all of your foes in flame. But you also have regular attacks, stealth attacks, the ability to knock big bad guys into a pit full of hungry spiders. Look, I'm selling it short, but I really don't think 2 combat encounters will really ever look the same.
That's super cool. So there's a lot of environmental interaction that plays into combat as well?
Yeah, I mean, you can hit a rock that's standing somewhere outdoors, and it might break and fall and then create a new entrance to the dungeon half your party members are already in that's just way below you. Or just look at environments like video games. Have you ever walked into a big, wide room in an RPG that only seems to contain skeletons who you just know are going to come to life and attack you? Well, in Baldur's Gate 3, you can just blatantly loot them all and steal their weapons so that when they inevitably wake up, they're screwed. In that way, it's a very systemic game.
Okay, so this is super D&D, and I'm really liking it. So how about that dice rolling stuff? How is there dice rolling during like checks for in combat?
Yeah, plenty. I mean, a lot of the game is up to chance, but of course your stats might boost the likelihood of certain things. I honestly love that aspect of it, and I just can't wait to see how it plays out in multiplayer, because there is multiplayer, or in the planned live stream viewer integrations. Even things like pickpocketing require the roll of a d20, and I just honestly love it. It doesn't shy at all away from being like D&D, and while I did get the impression Larian and Wizards of the Coast didn't have the easiest working relationship, I love what they came up with.
You know what? I'm really digging this too. Is there anything else that you really loved?
There are just so many different items, different arrow types that seem very unique that I don't think I've seen in other video games. Like there's one arrow type that you can shoot and it will explode in a shadow, creating stealth options for you, basically creating cover, which is really cool. There are different rings with cool different abilities, different kinds of armor and weapons, and just all of that stuff is presented in a way that carries so much more lore than I think your usual RPG does. I mean, I'm just so incredibly into how nerdy this game is. It owns the details really, really well, and there are options in combat that I feel like I can't even really begin to describe. And a lot of that has to do with how vertical the game is. It seems like every area has several layers and several vantage points, and everyone's playthroughs are just gonna look different.
Okay, so we talked about all those lovely, lovely good things, and there seems to be a lot of great stuff in this game. Anything you didn't like, though?
Look, honestly, it's a preview, so it's always hard to say. They always show you like the best chunk for the most part, but my impression is that this game is all kinds of amazing. But I think it will really only work for hardcore RPG fans. So removing that bias, it did have some graphical and textural issues, but naturally it is an early build. They're going to have a beta sometime soon, so I guess stay tuned for that. And in general, one thing that stood out to me at first, I was like, maybe this is a negative, but then maybe it's not, I'm not really sure, is that it's a lot more like Divinity Original Sin than I expected. It could almost be Original Sin 3 rather than Baldur's Gate, which I wasn't expecting, but naturally I was super impressed regardless, so I don't really mind more of Divinity Original Sin if that ends up being true. And that about sums it up. We'll let you know more details when we have them, or a release date when we find out. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Hello everyone, I'm Alana. We have Caden on the phone.
Heyo.
And today we are doing a preview of Persona 5 Royale, which, okay, first things first, is a weird game to preview because it's already out in Japan, and I have actively tried not to find out too much information about the Japanese version, but I know a couple of things that I've